welcome back to the Witchy Web We Weave. I'm Alex.
I'm Alara.
And we're doing another Check Your Pantry edition, but this time it's baking edition. And this is something we've been talking about for a minute.
Yeah.
Just hadn't gotten to it.
No.
So, we're gonna hop into you.
Alright. I'm just gonna... The ones I have listed are probably just the most common ingredients that I use for baking, especially if I'm doing a kitchen witchery type baking, which actually I've been doing a lot of here recently. I did a couple of different pies, like pumpkin pies for the new year that I specifically made for a gathering. And then I recently made like an apple-based pie. So the four that I really wanted to focus on for this particular edition of the Check Your Pantry baking is flour, sugar, baking soda, and eggs. So why don't we just go ahead and we'll start at the top of the list with flour. Flour is, you can either, the way that I normally look at flour, if you're just talking about white flour, all-purpose flour, you can either specifically use it when you're baking for a particular correspondence, or you can just use it as a blank canvas. Kind of your foundation or your base for whatever magical working you're wanting to do. But if you're wanting specifically to use it for a particular correspondence, things that normally you can use flour for are things like for growth or for life. You can also add flour to specifically nurture something in the spell that you're making or in your cooking, as to nurture whatever other correspondences are going into your baking. It can also be used for abundance or specifically prosperity, which is actually what I ended up using flour for whenever I baked my pumpkin pies and things like that. Is I used flour. I was going to have to use it anyway, but I specifically used it for adding the idea of abundance and prosperity along with some of the other ingredients that were going into everything. Flour can also be used when you need an association specifically for either a mother goddess or a crop goddess, if you're doing it specifically for something that is agricultural related. And then flour is also one of the baking correspondences, which there are a couple of different ones, but it's one of the ones that is associated with things like rebirth and things like that. Which most of what I use in my baking is just regular all-purpose flour. I very rarely use any other kind of flour. So that was the correspondences and things having to do with just regular all-purpose flour. And now I know Alex wanted to talk about some of the other variations or options of flour.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to just bring that up because I do have gluten sensitivities now that I didn't used to have. Yay, getting older. But yeah, and sometimes you just, even if you don't have sensitivities, you just... I know some people do gluten avoidance for other types of health reasons, like I know they say that if you overeat certain things, you build sensitivities to it, which is what the theory behind why a lot of kids, especially right now, are getting gluten sensitivities, because we're eating a lot of bread and stuff younger.
And cereal, yeah.
Cereals, bread, stuff like that. So they're thinking the sensitivity is coming from overexposure. So if you wanted to like cut back or kind of switch it up sometimes, there are other options. There are other options that are really easy to get a hold of now, because that is not what the case was even, 10 years ago. It was very hard to find alternative stuff. So, going with the flour thing, I do think it could be also used as a blank, because it's kind of like your foundation, I guess, whatever you're really making. If you're baking it, typically your foundation is some kind of floury substance. First one I want to talk about was almond. Now I do have, now this is funny because different sites gave me different correlations and correspondences. So some websites said feminine, some said masculine. Feminine, I'm guessing because seed, life, stuff like that. But I've also seen a lot of seed stuff be masculine for other obvious reasons. um, yeah, there's also Sparkle Life with the male side of everything, so we'll
Fair
just
enough.
leave it there. And I got Air as its correspondence, which I can kind of see that considering its planetary bases, which there are 4 planets associated with almonds, and they vary. So Mercury was the big one that, that's where I could see the air stuff. And then the other 3 were Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. And I was like, okay, I guess. I'm not sure why. And it's really good for the root chakra, specifically. And then what almond is good for, like if you don't want to just use it as a blank slate, was for banishing addictions, beauty. So that's why a lot of beauty product, you can do like a lot of almond oils and stuff on your body as long as you don't have allergies. And that's why eating almonds is good for your... We're not doctors, we don't talk about health stuff, but it's good for like internal stuff as well because of the oils in the almonds. Fertility is a good one because it's just the seed thing again. Luck, prosperity, wealth, mental clarity, divination, and protection.
Oh wow.
So it's got a range if you don't like the blank purpose for it. The other flower, and I'm only going to mention 3. I know there's tons of flower options, but I couldn't really find a lot of information on some of the stranger ones. Rice was my next one, and this would work if you do rice as a dish either way, honestly.
Rice, yeah, rice or rice flour.
Mm-hmm. Element is earth, planet is sun, and energy is feminine.
I can see that.
I was reading that in some countries, it's kind of looked to as its own goddess almost.
There is.
Definitely why it's lady energy.
And I also think that rice is heavily... I could be wrong, but I want to say I read recently that rice is associated with the sun goddess of Amaterasu.
Possibly.
And
you would
rice
definitely
is
know
a
more than
specific
me.
offering to her. Amaterasu is a goddess that I have known of
For a hot minute.
for a hot minute, since I was a young teenager. And I used to feel very attracted to her.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I
do love the sun.
What rice itself is good for is blessings, money and wealth, fertility, and protection. Again, kind of some of the same stuff as almond. But the other thing you can do with rice is sometimes people will color it, and then you could leave it out, like, so non-edible purposes. So you can kind of double up on that. Same with almonds. Like, I know you can keep it in your pocket for good luck, but I don't know. I feel like that would just make a mess.
I've seen rice used in like money spells
Mm-hmm.
and
Love.
and like specifically like voodoo work, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think our store started selling, like, you can buy green rice or red rice or pink rice or whatever. Now, a little fun tip about this one was the counting thing. So I just thought that was kind of funny because it was mentioned in this website, and it's like evil spirits apparently are very highly distracted by counting things. And so two ways I've seen this is you spill some rice in front of your door, and then they have to count each grain. But the other one I saw was if you leave like a little like container full of it, they also still have to count it because they'll see it and get like attracted to it. And the point of that is that's kind of going back with the protection thing, that it basically keeps that creature trapped outside till the sun comes up, and then they gotta scuttle away.
I have seen that same folklore, myth, theory associated with vampires, evil spirits, or specifically fae. And I think that works with both rice, sand, or sugar.
Yeah, granule stuff.
Where they have to stop and count the thing.
Like, that's terrible, but kind of funny. And then the last one I have information on is buckwheat. The only thing I had on it was that it's an earth element. So I think most of these are gonna have some kind of earth. If I had to guess, earth or air would be the 2 elements I'd associate with most types of flour. If I had to take a wild stab at it.
Oh yeah, just the way it grows and what it is.
Good for wealth and specifically protection of property.
Oh.
And I was reading that
Interesting.
the little tidbit I had on buckwheat, which kind of made me like that's kind of cute if you want to do sacred space or a sacred circle, you can use buckwheat, and it uses the same thing. It like creates its own sacred space when you use
Buckwheat
it.
flour?
Probably the flour, but I think the actual grain
Probably.
would work just as well. I think both of them. But like, if you didn't want to use salt because say you do your circle outside and you don't want to be killing your plants or something, you could use buckwheat and it would actually it would be the same effect. I'm like, that's kind of cool. I didn't know that.
That is interesting.
But yeah, that's my little spiel on if you have, you want to use other gluten-free options.
Yeah, for flour. Then I guess the next one I'll talk about is eggs. I use a lot of eggs in my baking. Eggs, I specifically use eggs a lot of times for new beginnings. I specifically, when I was doing my baking stuff for the new year, and I was making it specifically as a spell for abundance and prosperity for the new year for all of my loved ones, my friends and family. I used eggs as an indicator of the new year, of new beginnings and things like that. But I also used it because eggs are good for prosperity, just like regular flour can be. But because they're eggs, eggs are also heavily associated if you need to do any kind of fertility work, birth or conception or pregnancy magic. Eggs are kind of key. And then eggs can be associated with drawing out negativity and bad things, but I probably wouldn't. I personally wouldn't use that as much as a baking thing, just because normally that's associated with the shell of the egg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the egg cleansings.
Mm-hmm. So even though that is something commonly associated with eggs, I probably wouldn't incorporate it in a baking witchery sense for that particular reason. And then eggs are also closely associated with any kind of lunar or moon magic, and then specifically any goddess work. And that kind of makes sense to me.
See, I would have said sun, because it looks like a sun.
Yeah, I get that, but I think it's mostly the fact that eggs...
Very femme.
Very feminine, very childbirth and womb and feminine, female.
Like,
female workings.
Yes.
So that's why.
Not feel it.
Next one is sugar. So for sugar, I often use sugar for sweetening a situation or enhancing the other correspondence or ingredients that are being put into my baking. Like specifically when I was making pumpkin pies, and I was doing it specifically for abundance and prosperity and new beginning, in the new year. I used sugar to enhance all of the correspondences of abundance and prosperity for the new year. So I used it to build on what was already, all the energy that was already getting made through the process of of the mixing. Sugar can also be used to specifically draw something in, or to, in some ways, to trap something. So that's also an option.
It kind of reminds me of, sorry, have we ever talked about honey on our channel?
We have not. We kept saying that we were going to.
Yeah, because I wanted to talk about honey jars and stuff,
but we haven't gotten to it. We probably need to do that soon.
But the sugar thing reminds me of the honey jar thing, which reminds me of the enmieladas, which is like a Mexican kind of magic thing it's one of those things that Mexico is really funny because they're very superstitious and very magical, but they're very like, oh, we're Catholic, we don't do that, but they do that. Kind of cracks me up. But there's a lot of like, the best word I've got for it is brujeria, like, so witchery that people do to like for romantic purposes.
Don't go around calling it that. You're going to get in trouble.
But it is brujeria.
I know. I'm just saying, maybe not put a name to it.
But yeah, so enmieladas are things you do with sugar or honey when you're trying to land the other person. So it's very
So specifically for love work and love
specifically,
spells.
yeah. But yeah, and mialas can be really weird. Sometimes they involve like
Isn't there
undergarments.
Yeah, you were saying something about steeping someone's underwear in
Yeah,
in like
said,
a soup or a stew or something.
yeah, it gets pretty wild. So I'm like, that's pretty brutal, man. Like it's like who does that? But yeah, so
Very interesting.
yeah, so that's when you're like sweetening it up. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, which is why sugar is also heavily associated with any kind of love work. So, yeah. So, sorry, I can't get past the whole underwears in the stew. I need to, okay,
Yeah,
heart
'cause I don't
shift.
even think you could wash it first, man, because you want the essence still there. I'm like, oh.
It would probably, I mean, that would be a pretty potent spell, I would think. But, so yeah, that's sugar. Moving on. The last one that I just wanted to talk about really briefly is baking soda. Baking soda it's used a lot as an ingredient in baking, but for a very long time I didn't realize that I already had associations for baking soda. I don't know, I guess I just didn't really think about it a lot. But I already did have correspondences associated with it for me. But a lot of what I see baking soda for is being able to absorb negativity, or being able to raise positive energy. Like to be able to raise the vibration of something. So if you're trying to take a bad vibration or a bad situation and you're either wanting to suck all the bad out of it and only leave the good, or if you're wanting to just literally like uplift something, baking soda can be really, really useful in kitchen witchery. But then again, baking soda can also be used for the same purposes outside of just baking, which is why it's also really good for cleansing and things like that. It's like, I want to say one of the reasons probably why baking soda is so heavily associated with like absorbing negativity is one of the facts that it's good for odor absorption and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I was gonna say the little box in the back of the fridge so your fridge don't stink.
yeah, but a lot of times I use baking soda for like uplifting energy or uplifting a situation, bringing it to a higher level. I don't know. I guess I use it as a developer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just think it's funny because like my sister like drinks baking soda and water.
It's really good for like as an antacid.
Mm-hmm. And then people just brush with it. So I mean, yeah, getting rid of gross stuff. I can see it.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to start off very, very light with this and just kind
Basic.
of very basic. Just wanted a brief introduction of the 4 most common ingredients that I use in baking and what they can be associated with or what I've used them for. But yeah, I hope that y'all liked it or at least found it interesting. Let me know if y'all have any other associations or correspondences with any of these 4 basic baking ingredients. And I guess we'll see you next time. Many blessings.